right. Kick things off.
I think we're live.
All right. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Shaken Not Heard. This is our first episode in 2 weeks. As for anyone who's been following along since the beginning, we started with Dr. No, we didn't finish with No Time to Die. We did that one shortly after it came out. We did wrap up with Spectre. And after that, it became sort of more of an open, not sticking to a rigid structure, a rigid schedule of, okay, we got to do these movies in chronological order because we ran out of movies. So now it's more about what are the various other topics related to James Bond that we can talk about. So we did a couple weeks ago the similarities and parallels between James Bond and Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones being Elliot's big passion. And now we're talking about, cocktails this week. We have other things planned as far as the music, the cars, the ladies of the James Bond series. So this week we have a guest, my buddy Tom Jetner, who I've been known and speaking to for the last couple of years. Do you want to talk, Tom, about how we first started talking to one another?
So sure. This is so Dave and I share a mutual love for sports uniforms, and specifically baseball uniforms, and even more specifically the Chicago White Sox baseball uniforms.
Yep.
Dave and I work on, as a hobby, we work on different concepts of like, well, what would a team look like if they did this? What would they look like if they did that? And kind of as an ongoing adult art project, I guess you could call it. Our stuff is, we've had stuff published on uniwatch.com and different places. And we kind of like reached out to each other like, oh, we're both in Chicago. We're both White Sox fans. We're both Italian. It kind of made sense. So we started talking, and we started talking to some other guys too. And it's kind of led to just a long kind of standing friendship, I think would be the way to put it.
Yeah. So this week we were gonna, as I mentioned earlier, we're gonna focus on specifically the drinks of James Bond, and to kind of tie it back to not really the very beginning of the podcast, but Elliot, when did we start doing the time to drink? I think Octopussy was the first one. So Octopussy is what, like I think the 11th or 12th film in the series. So about halfway through doing these movies chronologically, we started a segment where we would make a drink for each film. At least for me, it wouldn't necessarily correspond with the movie, but in some cases, the book that inspired the film of the week. So the recipes, at least the majority of them, were coming from this book, the Shaken Cocktail book, which came out a couple years ago. I know I've told this story before. It keeps coming up. I foolishly gave away my physical copy as a wedding gift to a friend a few years ago. And then they decided to stop printing the book. So Elliot very generously, well, first he got me a digital copy, which was very handy to make a lot of these drinks over the last couple months. But then as a Christmas gift, he got me the physical copy, which is great because there's just something different about having a physical copy with the smell of the pages and all the glossy photos in your hand. It's great. So basically every week or every episode that we've done going back to Octopussy, we've made a different drink. And I've learned a lot about and have kind of developed a greater appreciation of cocktails, of making cocktails, of sort of what the essentials are that you should have on hand if you want to become sort of an educated drinker, I should say. How about you, Elliot? I know you haven't really gone as far as I have as making these really complex drinks every week, but have you grown sort of a greater appreciation for the different ingredients and elements to the various cocktails?
Oh yeah, because I mean, anyone who knows me, I mean, I do like my cocktails. I do like my drinks. I like drinking socially and all that. But it wasn't until we got into exploring how James Bond drinks, which is really so integral to the world of James Bond.
Yeah.
And we got that book. Mind you, that is that there are so many books out there that talk about quote unquote drinking like Bond and coming up with different recipes, but the Shaken book is the official one. I believe it's endorsed by the Ian Fleming estate. So
yes, Ian Fleming Publications. It is marked as the official 007 cocktail book.
So there is so much that goes into the different ingredients. It's almost like you have to have a professional bar at home. Dave, right? Dave, every time you wanted to make a new drink, you found yourself going to the grocery store and buying all this stuff that you normally wouldn't buy. You're like, oh.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing for me. When it was first suggested, one of our followers of the podcast said you should do something where you make a drink every week. And I think originally, I don't know if I maybe misinterpreted, but I thought the original idea was, okay, we'll stream and we'll like mix the drinks. And Elliot very correctly pointed out, nobody wants to watch us making drinks live on Facebook. So it came out, okay, we'll make the stuff in advance. And then I'll kind of give a background on the particular drink, what movie or what book it came from and what's in it and so on. And when we first started it, like I said, the first one we did was Octopussy, which was one of the more complicated drinks. But mind you, at the time when we started doing this, my liquor cabinet was very much one of a novice, you might say. So, and then I was flipping ahead I was planning ahead, like, okay, we got Octopussy, then we're going to do A View to a Kill and Living Daylights and so on and so forth. So I was planning ahead to kind of planning out each drink for each corresponding episode. I was thinking, man, half the ingredients, at least half, I haven't even heard of these things. It's like, it's going to be really expensive. I got to learn all these things about what are these different like cordials and different elements and things like that. But then once I realized after a couple weeks, and I will say it did wind up being very expensive. It was an expensive endeavor, but I've really, my liquor supply has like quadrupled in size since we started this. But it's worth it though, because we have a lot of stuff on hand that I otherwise probably would have never even thought about purchasing if we hadn't decided to do this little segment. But what I learned after a couple weeks is there's a couple things that reappear in so many of these cocktails that it's worth having them on hand, because you might not know what they are the first time you see them listed in a cocktail recipe, but then you'll see they'll just reappear over and over again, and then you consider them like an essential to have on hand at all times. If you're really going to kind of commit to becoming sort of like a connoisseur of this whole thing. So I'm glad, Elliot, in kind of shorthand, I'm glad we decided to commit to the segment. And I've learned a lot about cocktails and mixing and things like that. And Tom seems to have a really informed background in this. So
it was a very similar situation.
You're the most educated person I know about this without being a full-blown alcoholic. So it actually wound up kind of very similar as I fell into it kind of accidentally. Is that with the pandemic raging, you got to drink at home, and I found a really good recipe for an old fashioned, and I shared it with my brother. My brother really liked it, and then late last summer he told me, "Boy, we've been trying to get the we love your old fashioned. We've been trying to get the margarita right. Can you take a crack at it?" So I bought the dry curacao. I went through a dozen different recipes, and once you're there, then you start to fall down a rabbit hole, because okay, now I've done the margarita. It's like, could I do a Mai Tai? Could I do a whiskey sour? Could I do other? You start to go down a list of things that you wanted, and then there was one time when I found out that if you can make 4 different drinks on a quadrant.
like a matrix.
Mhm.
If you take a bottle of gin to start with, and then you swap out sweet or dry vermouth, and then either orange bitters or Campari, you can make 4 different drinks that are all very good and very well established between the Martini, the Cardinale, the Negroni, and the Martinez, which are all terrific drinks. And if you just have those ingredients, you can make any one of them. So a lot of that stuff, like, and things where, like, Dave, like, was there a particular ingredient that you found that you wouldn't have suspected that you put in more drinks than because I know there's a couple for me that I found I wind up putting in a lot more drinks than I would expect.
Definitely, and mind you, going into this, I didn't have a ton of background in different spirits and things like that. I knew probably what you describe as the absolute bare minimum about vodka and gin and whiskey and those sorts of things. But definitely Luxardo would be one of them.
Oh, maraschino liqueur?
Yeah, yes. And then the Coca Americano, which is an essential ingredient to a Vesper, which I had never, essential. And I had, I had being a Bond fan, of course. I had Vespers before, at bars, and on my honeymoon, we went to a bar, and we were in London, so I had to order one there. I had never made one for myself at home, so I knew that there was gin and vodka in it. I didn't think about a third ingredient, and then it's sort of like a versatile ingredient, element to other drinks. That would definitely be one of those that you would to answer your question.
Yeah, I found that I would say the maraschino liqueur was way up there with me, and then the other one I found was some variety of orange liqueur. Either the one that I found was the Pierre Ferrand dry curacao, and there's a whole history of like the type of bitter orange, like using a particular type of bitter orange that was found on the island of Curacao, and this gives us, combined with cognac, gives us it gives us triple sec, it gives us Cointreau, Grand Marnier. These are all kind of descended from some kind of orange curacao that was developed in the 19th century, and it shows up in a lot of stuff. It's in the margarita, it's in the Mai Tai, it's in a whole arrangement of tiki drinks, and even in whiskey cocktails. The kind of, there's a 19th century old fashioned that uses orange curacao in it. And I found that it actually makes a really good way to make a better version of a Wisconsin old fashioned if you use the orange curacao instead of the actual orange.
Oh, cool.
But that was the one for me. So, Dave, what are we drinking right now? We I feel like we skipped a step. We got right into the conversation.
With the topic for this episode, I felt like, okay, we can like build to that, but no, we should definitely get that out of the way right now. I am drinking of course, a Vesper, which is the sort of quintessential James Bond drink. And I've had this one before, so I'm not going to bore everyone with all the measurements and ingredients. But Elliot, I think you said that you had made 2 drinks, so I'm curious to hear what those are.
My intention was to make a Vesper like you, but again, the snow kept me from getting into, get all the appropriate ingredients. Plus, I had to shovel my driveway, so I went with. I'm not with it yet, but I've got a dirty martini off to the side with almond stuffed olives right now. And
nice.
I've been working on this classic old fashioned. Made with some Dead Drop bourbon. This is a distillery here in Illinois, from out here in Thornton, Illinois. Made with bitters, organic orange juice, and organic sugar.
Cool. So, sounds tasty.
That sounds great.
It's been pretty good, and it's like while you guys are talking, I'm just drinking away here. So so thank you.
How about you, Tom?
I'm drinking a more or less pretty classical martini. This is kind of my preferred ratio. This is a 2-to-1, 2 ounces of Koval dry gin from over on Ravenswood here in Chicago, and Dolin dry vermouth from France, and then I've got a couple of dashes of Regan's orange bitters in there as well. Twist of lemon, hard to beat.
Yeah.
So I thought that was, and particularly since I've expected to do a lot of talking about martinis today, I figured that the best way to start off would be with a martini, because there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in the Bond novels and in the Bond movies, and when it comes to martinis.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to my next question. Is we've been, as you mentioned earlier, we've been kind of chatting back and forth over the last couple of weeks about the proper way to make a martini and the different preferred way to make a martini depending on who you ask. And one of the interesting things you brought to my attention was how there is a school of thought that Ian Fleming's descriptions or his ratio of martinis, or specifically the Vesper dry martini, some guys take issue with that. So I wanted to see talk about that.
There's a lot of question as to whether or not the Vesper is actually a good drink. Because the way it's described in the novels is 3 parts gin, 1 part vodka, and half a part of what's in the novel and in the film is Kina Lillet, which is kind of an aromatized fortified wine with quinine in it, which is the same ingredient as in tonic water. And I found out just today that one of the reasons, this is an article by in the Daily Beast, that one of the reasons why this was included in Casino Royale is because the Kina Lillet was actually apparently very popular in Jamaica when Ian Fleming was writing the novel, because it had quinine in it, because it was an anti-malarial in the tropics that you could find. But if you look at martinis are usually measured by the ratio of booze to fortified wine. Most of the time that's vermouth. In the Vesper, it's Kina. And at the time, most frequently you're talking about 2-to-1, 3-to-1 booze to wine. And the Vesper is an 8-to-1 martini, which is kind of crazy if you're really thinking about it. Drinking an 8-to-1 ratio martini, or at least crazy for that time.
Yeah.
I found some cocktail manuals there was a British cocktail manual from the 50s that noted that the ratio should be about 2-to-1, but that the Americans were for some reason making it much, much drier in terms of less and less vermouth and more booze. And it got to be kind of an interesting question for me as to why so much booze in a martini, particularly at a time in the 50s and the 60s when you were getting a lot more sweet drinks and screwdrivers and mules and things like that, rum and coke being very popular. As to why this particular cocktail got so booze heavy. And I did get an answer. I reached on Twitter to cocktail historian David Wondrich, who's wrote the wonderful book Imbibe, among several others. And I asked him, why did the martini get so boozy in like the 50s and the 60s? And apparently the answer he came back was post-traumatic stress disorder. Is that after the war, apparently the need for just more booze in your drink.
Yeah.
Now I think on top of that, there's some machismo on top of that too. because the martini started out in the 1920s. Well, it's a 19th century drink, but over the course of Prohibition, it became the drink of the modern American woman of the 1920s, with a foot on the bar rail and a martini in her hand. The flapper, the short hair, the short skirt, everything like that.
Where did those women go?
They're still here. They're still here.
I need to meet me a woman like that.
They're everywhere. They're all over the place.
I'm just hanging out in the wrong clubs. Okay.
They're all over the place. They're here more than I think than ever before. But I think after the war, it became it's very strange what happens to the martini after the war. It just dries up completely. And I think there was a certain, because it became a question of like, how dry do you want your martini? Oh, I want my martini very dry.
Mm.
I want it very dry. And it kind of becomes a game of one-upsmanship, particularly when you get someone like Churchill who comes in and says, oh, I just wave the bottle of vermouth around the gin before I make the martini. So I think there was a certain amount of that, but it's just an odd question as to why this happened. And I think the Bond novels and the Bond movies are a part of that too, because the martini figures so closely into both the novels and the films.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
I'm curious though, as he says, as he pulls his martini out finally. Cheers, gentlemen. Cheers.
Cheers.
That will be the thumbnail image to represent this episode.
Yeah, really. Wait, hold on. Let's do that again.
Okay.
Holding it properly. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.
It's so good when it touches your lips. But okay, there's so many drinks in the Bond novels. I mean, Bond drinks. He drinks martinis. He also drinks coffee. He drinks mint juleps. He drinks a lot of different things. I'm just curious, why was it the martini? Or maybe, I mean, this is a question that really should be better directed towards the broccolis. Like, why did they settle on the martini as being the drink? Was it a marketing thing? Was it this is what we think people will react to? Did they say, hey, we're going to have him drinking a lot of stuff, but then the public just, kind of glommed onto that? Because even when you look at the movies, if I remember correctly, Sean Connery has like 3 different types of drinks in his run. At one point, even in Pierce Brosnan's run, he's just drinking straight vodka. He's not even putting anything in it. So, I'm just curious as to why the martini ended up being the thing.
He needed the straight vodka to suffer through those scripts.
Ouch!
Ouch! I think I have a couple of theories. I think Dave, you would know better than on the books, but I think on the books the martini is the single most ordered cocktail.
Yeah, I would say
straight whiskey.
Yes.
And I suspect it's something in the ordering process, and what that does for the script and what that does for the audience. Because if Bond walks into a place and he says, I'll have an old fashioned, that's it. Everything's done. Everyone knows what an old fashioned is and what the ingredients are in that.
Yeah, but John Hamm orders an old fashioned in Mad Men, and I'm like, God damn, I want an old fashioned right now. There's even an episode where he makes an old fashioned, and
he makes that terrible old fashioned.
I know it's terrible, but I'm just saying. I mean, watching him do it, I'm like, oh man,
because it's cool, because there's an element of control.
Yes.
In that situation, because with what I've noticed with a lot of martini orders is you have to specify, like, how dry do you want it? Do you want gin? Do you want vodka? Do you want a twist? Do you want olives? Do you want it dirty? So there's a specificity to it where he has to go through the whole order process of like medium dry vodka martini, shaken, not stirred.
Yeah.
That's an assertion of control over a situation, and it can tell the audience something about us. Okay, he's cool as a cucumber. And even in Goldfinger, when he's ordering a mint julep, they said, "Do you want one?" And he gives a specific order on that. It's like sour mash, not too sweet. So he gives a specific order to show that he's knowledgeable of it and that he's in control, at least of the situation, that he's able to give a specific drink. And you see it in Casino Royale as well as with the Vesper order.
Yeah,
that's great in Casino Royale when he gives the whole rundown to the Vesper while he's looking right at Le Chiffre across the table.
Yeah,
he's not even the waiter's over here, and he's not even paying attention. He's just saying exactly what he wants in the drink, and he's running it off in front of Le Chiffre as a way after he's just been cleaned out.
Yeah,
in the hand. So it's very useful, I think, as a plot device compared to other cocktails where you have to be as specific in a drink order.
Yeah, and it also plays into sort of the character development in Casino Royale. Yes. When the bartender has some shaken or stirred, does it look like a give a damn? Well, because he's not the fully formed James Bond yet. And then by the end of, tenure, a couple films later, he knows he knows the quantities, the exact ingredients. He knows that he wants it shaken, not stirred. But at the beginning, he's not that fully formed character as we know him just yet.
Right, exactly. It becomes a very useful kind of plot mechanic.
Yeah, exactly.
And Dave, we were talking about this also with the Martini in particular. If you were looking at it in 1962, the Martini is kind of the old man's drink. That it's not what the youth of America were drinking in the 60s. That this was a pre-prohibition classic cocktail, and Bond is not a flower child. And he talks about listening to the Beatles with needing earmuffs to listen to the Beatles, of all things.
Yeah.
So establishing him as someone older, of an older generation, who would be someone who would drink a martini, someone who would be the parents of the kids going to see this movie.
Yeah.
Or an adult, someone who the kids would want to grow up to or grow up to be or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's that element there too that I think is plays into the role of the Martini in the Bond films.
Yeah, exactly. So beyond the Martini, I was wondering, do you have a copy of this book, by the way, Tom? The Shaken book?
I don't have a copy of that book. I have my primary cocktail book that I go to is from The Office, that's where I believe I sent you the Vesper recipe.
Yeah.
There, The Office, which is the official speakeasy attached to the Aviary here in Chicago. And they have some terrific recipes in there. But that's the one I primarily use.
Okay.
Books go.
So I'm just curious, beyond, obviously, we talked a lot about the Martini. What's some other cocktails and maybe some lesser known ones, if there are any, that come to mind that you're really into, you really enjoy?
The Americano.
Yep.
Which is actually the first cocktail mentioned in Casino Royale in the book.
Yeah.
The Americano, because there's Americano Coffee, which is basically what the Italians did when GIs started asking for coffee and they were given espresso and they didn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
So it's how I start my day most of the time. So yeah.
I used to be down on them, but now I really like coffee Americanos. But the Americano cocktail is 1 ounce of Campari and 1 part of sweet vermouth topped off with seltzer or soda water. And that is an outstanding drink. That's an aperitivo. That's like right before you're going to have like a nice big meal or something like that, where, you're getting ready to sit down to a nice plate of, spaghetti carbonara or something like that, or something satisfying, and you need to prepare your stomach for that. That's great because it's sweet and bitter and will hit fizzy and it'll hit your stomach exactly the right way. And he drinks a few of those in the novels, but I don't think he drinks any in the movies.
I don't believe so. No.
Yeah, he drinks a lot of straight whiskey in the movies. Like a lot of straight whiskey.
Yeah,
as God intended.
As God intended.
Yeah.
What's something you want to drink right before you're about to pop a cap in somebody? British style. Suave. I need something to calm to quiet the voices of the many that I have killed in the past before I add another one. Pop, pop.
Oh, that's a good question. Before going on a mission, what you want? Because you don't want something too high of proof that will mess with your readiness.
Yeah.
Dave, do you have an answer to that? What if you had to go? If you had, let's say you had to go and infiltrate some kind of high price casino, something like that, and meet Blofeld. What would you want before you went into that?
Oh man. I got to ruminate on that for a little bit.
That's a deep question.
Yeah. There's a theory though behind why Bond orders the drink shaken rather than stirred. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay.
I've heard that. Yes. That the shaken part adds more water to the drink and therefore dilutes it.
Yes.
But I mean, it's still 2 ounces of vodka. It's still like 3 ounces of vodka and 1 ounce of vermouth, no matter how you. The booze is still in the drink, no matter if you lengthen it or not.
Yeah.
It's what, I was going to say, it's what Josiah Bartlett on the West Wing said. Bond is ordering a watered down martini and being snooty about it. So.
He is being snooty is part of being Bond.
Yes.
Part of the character is being a little bit snooty. That you can tell your boss he's drinking the wrong brandy.
It's just I know I love the part like in the beginning of the Shaken cocktail book that we've got, that Dave's got. You have that whole preface where Ian Fleming explains that he would do that very thing. He would go to the bartender and order the martini a very particular way, to the point where if the bartender was off, he'd make him start over again, and kind of be difficult about the whole thing.
Yes,
just be difficult, and then afterwards he'd go, why are you doing that? Why are you making them go through that? And he goes, because now that bartender has a story. Now they can talk about the time. I mean, can you imagine that being someone who actually once prepared a martini for Ian Fleming? That's the bartenders
story. The bartenders at Duke's in London. There were ones that pouring martinis for Ian Fleming.
Yeah,
and all about that. You can still go to Duke's is still open in London.
I could only imagine what that was like. To have you had that experience. That's there's almost like a communal experience. It's not just the fact that you got a drink from me, but that we had this interchange. Getting it ready, me creating it for you. You're giving me guff about the way I'm doing it. Okay, now it's perfect. Thank you. Whew, now I can move on. And then later on, oh my God, that's the guy who created James Bond, and he's got his character doing the exact same thing.
He's sitting there chain smoking at the end of the bar with his martini and thinking about what his next novel is going to be. And you got to think about that.
Yeah. So Tom, what is your, I don't know if we talked about this. What was your, and I probably should have asked this at the very beginning, but what was, you remember your way into James Bond, like how you the first movie you saw, how you
what
character, things like that.
Probably watching one of the channels always seemed to be running them. Like either it was like channel 50 or later on we got cable, TBS or something would always be just running like a marathon of them. Yeah. So there's some movies I don't think I've seen the whole movie, but I haven't actually seen it in order.
Okay.
Like I feel that way with The Spy Who Loved Me, where I've seen the movie many times, but I've never actually sat down and to see it in order from start to finish, because I would get pulled at it and I'd get sucked into it or something like that.
Yeah.
And then of course, like many people of my generation, you get sucked into the GoldenEye N64 game, and that becomes a hobby of like playing against your brothers and your friends and the kids down the street, and having tournaments and things like that, and saying, okay, we're going to do slappers only, or we're going to do golden gun only. And then it just becomes, it's like, okay, I try not to miss a movie. I think I got delayed because of COVID for seeing No Time to Die, but I made sure to get around to it eventually.
Yeah.
But I came to really, Casino Royale is one of those movies that my wife and I, it's one of our favorites that we watch together. It's a hard movie to beat. So
yeah.
So I think growing up, my favorites growing up, I think, were Goldfinger and Goldeneye. Those
Okay.
are the two that I think that I like the best.
Yeah.
I know that David, you're not a fan. We have some people who are not fans of Goldeneye on this, or not fan. You're not a fan of Pierce Brosnan generally, but
correct. But I do really love Goldeneye. That is, like, to me, that's his one indisputed classic entry in the series.
yeah,
Goldeneye gets plenty of love from me.
The running joke right now is that Andrew Garfield, who played Spider-Man in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, he's the Pierce Brosnan of Spider-Man. And that there's so many people now who appreciate him with the last, Spider-Man movie. I'm waiting for something, when they finally do a bit where people are they're gonna appreciate Pierce Brosnan. Something's gonna happen. People are gonna finally really appreciate him as James Bond. I'm telling you, because I really
I don't think people dislike Pierce Brosnan was a very popular James Bond.
yes.
I just think now, in light of the Daniel Craig movies, specifically maybe not so much his performance, but his movies really kind of pale in comparison. Like, their weaknesses are more obvious. But as far as him as Bond, I don't think it's not like, for instance, Timothy Dalton, where there's almost like there's definitely been like a reevaluation, I think, in light of the Daniel Craig movies.
Mm-hmm.
Where people are looking back, and even though he only did 2, people are looking back at those and saying, hey, what he was doing back in the late 80s is not terribly different from what Daniel Craig is doing now, but maybe people didn't realize that's what they wanted or what the series needed at the time. And then, through no fault of his own, he only did 2 movies, and then we had to wait, half a decade for Bond to come back. But I don't think there was never like a backlash against Pierce Brosnan, or like some rejection of him.
No.
But it's more so his movies than him as Bond.
Yeah.
You've got your friend Mike, who constantly rags on Pierce
One
Brosnan.
person. You talking about one person.
No, but he's not the only one. I mean, I've heard, they're from time to time like, oh, Pierce Brosnan, rah, 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 rah. And yes, don't get me wrong, it could be a minority. Unfortunately, they're the loud ones, and they always happen to be sitting right next to me in the movie theater.
Yeah. Well, it's the loud minority that always gets the attention.
True.
It's like all the backlash against the 2016 Ghostbusters movie. Most of the backlash it got was because it was not a good movie. There was some loud, obnoxious, sexist, misogynist people. Oh, I don't want, female Ghostbusters. But that was as far as the broader, group of people who were critiquing the movie. They were like a small minority who just happened to be very loud and obnoxious about it. But most of the criticism for that movie was because it just wasn't good.
Well, I would not to get us off the Bond talk, but just to say in defense of the 2016 Ghostbusters movie, it was still better than Ghostbusters 2.
No.
Ghostbusters 2 was
okay.
horrendous.
That's going to be an interesting conversation, because I got a little brother who still has nightmares about Vigo the Carpathian. So
I would argue that Ghostbusters 2 has scarier moments than any of the other movies. I remember as a kid, this river of slime scared the hell out of me.
Well,
and they're down in the old abandoned subway station, and there's a bunch of heads on pikes. Like, there's nothing like funny about that. It's just outright creepy and scary.
The Statue of Liberty walks at the end of the movie, okay? I take anything you put leading up to that, you wipe it all away when somehow you get the Statue of Liberty to walk. And that was fun. Ridiculous. That was ridiculous when they did it in Doctor Who. So
that's fine. It's like with Bond dressing as a clown in Octopussy. I can completely forgive it. It's necessary to the plot.
It's forgiven. Yes, I'll give it. But you don't put on immaculate clown makeup like that in 30 seconds like he did.
That is ridiculous. That's the most ridiculous thing about it.
I'm still wondering how he changed into that suit in The Man of the Golden Gun at the end.
Oh,
he's in Scaramanga's lair.
Yeah,
yeah, and he changes clothes with the mannequin. Like how? Mm-hmm. So there was like a 30-second time frame where he's in there in his underwear, with a guy walking around trying to shoot him.
Yeah, that's a great thought about that. That's a great point.
If I can take just a quick moment, I want to give a shout out to I Am Doodles, who says, "Cheers from Tijuana, Mexico." I Am Doodles from the from my friends at the Spanish Nerds podcast. So hey, thanks for checking in, guys.
Very nice.
Very nice.
Speaking about specifically Daniel Craig's Bond, I don't know if you guys had a chance to check this out, but a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, they put on YouTube the Being James Bond documentary, which was it was originally released exclusively on the Apple Plus. Was it Apple TV Plus? Is that the name of the streaming service?
Yeah.
And you had to pay for it too. Like it was an additional thing you had.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, that's you had to order it like a movie. Yeah.
Okay. And I also thought that it was something that they were going to have like just as like a fixture on their service, but no, it was like for a month. Mm-hmm. I think it was like they released it a month or so before No Time to Die came out. And then I think like as soon as No Time to Die was released in theaters, they took it off. And then so I was screwed because I didn't have that service and I didn't have a way of seeing it, watching it. But then they put it on the Blu-ray 4K Blu-ray edition, which I did not. I got just the standard Blu-ray for Christmas, but now they put it on YouTube free to watch. So I watched that earlier today before this. And it's really good. It's sort of like a retrospective of the whole Daniel Craig era, and he goes through. You don't actually see him being interviewed. It's all voiceover stuff. It's like a conversation between him and Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson. And he just kind of goes through the process of how he was cast. And there's a little peek at his screen test, which was pretty cool back in, I think, 2005, 2006. And then he kind of goes through everything about like the initial reception, how he was cast, which was not a very good reception, if you can remember. Yeah, the whole Craig Not Bond website and how Bond shouldn't be blonde and all that nonsense.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah.
And then he just kind of walks through his experience filming each of his 5 movies. And he was very candid about Quantum of Solace and Spectre not being the best of the 5, if for various reasons. It's not, he doesn't just dismiss them. He talks about why they were flawed and why they had the issues they did. And then he, of course, it sort of ends with him talking about No Time to Die. And it's really great. It's definitely worth watching. So for all of our other followers of the show, if you haven't seen that yet, check that out.
I believe we shared a link to it on the Facebook page. So if we didn't, we'll make sure we put it on there.
Cool.
Well, I believe in Spectre, he has I think that's the first time he has a dirty martini in the entire series.
Yeah, I was noticing that too. I rewatched Spectre a while ago. I hadn't seen it in a while, and that stood out to me because that's not
a normal order for him.
Yeah, that's not something you associate with his Bond.
Well, usually, when Bond gets the martini, is usually pretty crystal clear, and adding the olive brine always kind of changes the texture of the drink a little bit.
Yeah, definitely.
But it is vodka. It's still vodka. It's not a Vesper.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to we're talking about Quantum of Solace, the 6th that he had. I don't know how he's not dead. Because you drink 6 of those back to back to back to back. It's just, you should be dead. That's just my opinion. It's just.
Well, this is also the guy that smokes 60 cigarettes a day, according to the books.
According to the books.
I'm curious because, talk about the drinking part. I mean, Bond almost seems kind of like Wolverine in his Wolverine has a healing factor. Bond has a liver that can handle infinite amounts of booze. I think we had a guest on, Dave. Didn't we have a guest on? One of your friends, was it Brad, who said he tried drinking that many Vespers in one evening?
Yeah, Brad.
Yeah, he said it was just too much. It's like by the time he got to like the fourth one, he realized it was a bad idea, and but that's so like part of the character. You have all these guys because we don't like Bond is a male power fantasy. He's like the guy everyone wants to be. He's good looking. He dresses well. He's refined. Women, he can talk to women, say the most inappropriate things. They'll still drop their clothes off for him. It doesn't really matter. I mean, Roger Moore will start undressing you the moment he meets you. So
a woman 30 years younger than him.
30 years younger, right?
Yeah.
But booze, it's the booze. That's like a big thing about it. And then you have these bros out there who they're hitting mothers on a Saturday night, and they are not James Bonding anything. They are not smooth. They're not whatever.
Well, there's the issue though is that Bond doesn't actually drink every drink he orders. Is that the guys down going into mothers aren't having Spectre assassins trying to kill them before they get past their first sip of alcohol.
Yeah,
because that's a category. There's a great article that listed all of the drinks ordered in all of the movies, and there's a shocking number of them that are like Bond orders but does not drink a whiskey. Mm-hmm. Bond orders but does not drink a martini. Where I think that happens where something happens in the plot, and he never actually gets to sit down and drink the drink.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one that kind of most surprised me is after he goes back and he downs that in Casino Royale, after he kills those two guys in the hotel, he goes back to his room and downs a whole tumbler of bourbon or scotch or something like that, and he goes right back down to play cards in just one gulp. That's the one that I thought that was just like crazy, like that you could do that.
And in those two moments, now I recall those two moments where he's just having moments with Vesper Lind when they're on the train, and after he's won the big card game, they're drinking red wine together. He's not having a martini. He's having dinner.
No, I believe he does have a martini after he wins, because that's where he names the drink.
Right. No, I'm just saying, but it's like when they're celebratory dinner that they're having together. They're also, but they have the big goblets of red wine.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which is another thing that Indiana Jones drinks. You'll see him drinking that in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. He's drinking red wine. So, I think that was another homage. Following up on the last episode.
A lot of wine draw, a lot of champagne. We should talk about champagne.
Okay. Yeah.
The champagne is everywhere in these movies.
Yeah.
It's all. I think it's in almost every single movie where there's a bottle of champagne popped at some point. There's all kinds of bits with it too. They do all kinds of comedy bits with it, where he's got the bottle of champagne like tied to the side of the boat and it's like chilling in the water, or in Goldeneye where he's got it in the armrest.
Yeah.
Of the Aston Martin or something like that. He always seems to have like the best champagne like available. Like I don't.
Or the inspector swipes the DB5, or he swipes the concept car Aston Martin when he goes to Rome, and he gifts Q like a bottle of a chilled bottle of champagne as a thank you for taking the car that he's not supposed to have.
For taking the car, because that's totally worth $100,000 concept car is a nice bottle of champagne.
That he winds up destroying.
In the first scene of the next movie. Well, if he's driving around for a little bit more before he destroyed it or something like that.
I know that whenever there's a new Bond film, I'm curious. Whenever there's a new Bond film, yes, there's a lot of promotion surrounding the spirits. I mean, with No Time to Die, they did the big bit with the Jamaican rum, the Blackwell Jamaican rum. That, man, did I go through a lot trying to find that limited edition bottle, to get. Then of course you had the Heineken, and there's different types of champagnes, the limited edition champagnes. I mean, is that really? I'm just curious what the profit margins are for this kind of stuff. I mean, are companies really getting on board with the James Bond stuff and saying, "Hey, we're going to sell more of this if it has the James Bond association"?
I can't say for more recently. So, I don't have the figures on it, but I know that people kept ordering martinis, and it's transitioned even further to vodka martinis after the Bond movies began coming out. The transition from you can actually see the transition from gin to vodka in the books. Is that the some of the early books are more continuous gin martinis, classic gin martinis, and the switch is made to vodka. But that's not it is a capitalism thing, but it's not a product promotion thing. Because what happened over the course of the 50s is Smirnoff advertised the hell out of vodka as an effort to kind of replace gin as the clear spirit in America. And over the course of you can actually see this. I've seen online, it was shared again through David Wondrich. You can see the menus for different cocktail bars, and you can see the martini section of changing toward vodka over the course of from like 1933 to like 1955. Of that shift happening away from gin and toward vodka, and then vodka becomes the number one spirit in America over the course of the 70s and the 80s. And this is without access to Russian or Polish vodka on any kind of large scale because of the cult. Like you could get Stolichnaya by like the late 70s and the early 80s, but mostly it was Smirnoff, which is an American company. And they did it through advertising. They did it through the Moscow Mule. And that happened in conjunction with, particularly with Hollywood and with the jet set and things like that, that Fleming was coming into contact with people at his house in Jamaica, people who were coming from Hollywood or people who were coming from the jet set types, where vodka was the hit spirit, the trendy spirit. Yeah. It was clear, it was odorless, it was tasteless, it was clean, it was filtered or something. Like it didn't have the oily texture sometimes or the sweet texture that you get from gin. So it became this like hit over the course of the 50s. And the Bond movies then you can see it in the books, and the movies just take it and run with it. Like he already has a bottle of Smirnoff in in his hotel, and throughout the first by Dr. No, it's just there. And it's a movie since then.
Yeah.
But was it gluten-free?
That's a good. Well, let's see. I don't know. I don't think Smirnoff was making gluten-free vodka in 19. Pretty sure it was still grain alcohol that they were using because it was grain and potatoes.
Yeah.
I remember there was a big when Skyfall came out. There was a big tie-in with Belvedere Vodka.
Oh,
it had the. I just remember going to Binny's and seeing the bottle design was like the Skyfall. His home, the Skyfall Manor, which I believe Belvedere, I think, is Polish.
I think it might be French, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think it might be like I could check it, but I think it's French. I don't think it's Polish.
Okay.
No, you're right. It is Polish. Yeah, Polish rye vodka. Grey Goose is French. That's what it is. Grey Goose is French.
I know in the books he specifically prefers Polish vodka to Russian.
I've had Polish vodka. It's really good.
Can you speak to the difference between the two? Because I've never compared them.
I think it might be a question of quality because there's times when I've been drinking with Polish friends of mine and being served from their stock at their home bars, and it's really quite. I'm not a vodka person, but it's really quite good.
Okay.
as far as the Polish vodka goes. But it's depending on the grain. Like any alcohol, it's dependent on the grain you used.
Okay. Yeah.
And because rye whiskey is different from barley malt and things like that, depending on what you get. So Dave, I think we talked about the inspiration for Vesper Lind originally being a Polish emigre during World War II.
Yeah. Yeah. You sent me an article.
Yeah, I sent you an article about that. I forget her name, but that was a situation where she actually died very publicly around the time that Fleming was writing Casino Royale.
Mm.
And it's been suspected that, even though I think he denied it or something, they were both in the Secret Service during the war, but I don't think Fleming ever actually met her. But she was a very famous English spy, and she was a Polish emigre.
Yeah.
And that was the description of Vesper Lind. I think she placed second place in Miss Poland too during the 1930s. So
yeah,
that was a factor in creating the character as well. But I haven't seen anything to really kind of verify that. That's been just a suspicion.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't surprise me if it was very public that the insistence on Polish vodka might have had as much to do with the particular character or the role of Poles in the British Secret Service that Fleming would have encountered during the war, because you had a lot of Poles who came to Britain after Poland fell to the Nazis, and then who could then be used to send back as agents into Germany or into Poland during the course of the war for intelligence gathering purposes.
Yeah.
So that's a factor in the Polish vodka.
Yeah. How's that martini going, Elliot?
I feel bad. You guys are pretty much carrying the show, and I'm just sitting here drinking. I would say, Tom, I appreciate you've got a lot of it's a lot of really interesting stuff. Because correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, James Bond, the literary character, is also a veteran of World War II, if I remember correctly.
I think that's good.
And you're talking if you are saying that the drinks getting boozier are a product of dealing with PTSD, it makes perfect sense for Bond to booze it up like he does. The problem that occurs, mind you, is as the character keeps having his personal timeline shifted forward, because the modern day Bond isn't a veteran of World War II, right? I mean,
he'd be like 90 years old.
He'd be 92, right? And so if he's a war veteran, even, although that's never really intimated in any of the films, they'd even be saying that he's not dealing with his PTSD quite appropriately. A modern Bond would be like talking to his, therapist, and I mean that's bad. Not that it's
well,
wrong.
That's referenced in Casino Royale. Vesper in the train ride talks about maladjusted young men.
Yes.
She mentions former SAS types with easy smiles and expensive watches.
Yep.
So that is they lean into just a tiny bit of that.
Yeah.
But not.
Yeah, but where did he get his battle scars? In Grenada? I mean, come on. I mean, was it really? Yeah.
Well, now you could do that easy now. You could say
was he in Afghanistan?
You could say Afghanistan. You could say Iraq.
Well, if they reboot, they're going to have to do now with the whatever the next iteration is. Then Afghanistan, Iraq would probably be the logical choice for a guy. If he's going to be a guy, I don't know, his late 30s or so, like roughly the age Daniel Craig was when he started.
Because Craig fell into a weird thing where he was a little too kind of old to play someone. He was playing a younger. Bond is generally played as an older. We talked about that earlier with him even him wanting an old man drink.
Yeah.
In the 60s. I'm trying to think of what would be then the equivalent of the old man drink, and for someone who. I'm not qualified. And you know what? I'm going to stop right there. I'm not qualified to answer that question.
If a martini, I'm just curious. So you say the martini was the old man drink in the 60s. What was the young person's drink in the 60s? I mean, were they I'm sorry?
Moscow Mule.
Ah, okay.
Moscow Mule was a big one.
I mean, weren't they just doing the wacky tobacco back then? I mean,
that's a factor. That's a factor in the decline of hard alcohol that's been talked about. I say
aging myself as I use that
term. Vodka, a screwdriver. I see a lot of advertisement for screwdrivers. Orange juice. God, I think of the Leo DiCaprio's character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood doesn't count because he's drinking whiskey sours and he's a really old guy. He's playing an older character in that movie too. The 60s is when the margarita really starts to explode, which is a hell of a drink.
Man, you just I can't remember the last time I had a whiskey sour. I used to love whiskey sours.
You ever made whiskey sour with an egg white?
Yeah.
Oh God, it's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't have the patience to make one myself. It would be I would always order one. It would be at a bar, and then I'd have at one of the nicer bars where I could ask, "Hey, can I have a whiskey sour?" And they make it, and I'm like, "Oh, great!" But like at home, no. So,
well, that's like another category of like the drinks that Bond drinks when he's out versus the drinks he drinks when he's in private. Because there is that divide there too, in terms of what you would order at a bar versus what you would order in necessarily if you're by yourself. Like I always go down the menu when I'm at a bar of like, okay, what kind of drinks do they have now? When I'm at home, I make something a lot simpler.
Yeah. Well, it's like when you go to a restaurant. I go to a restaurant, talking about food for a second with my wife, and I narrow something down to like 2 dishes I really want. I can't decide between 2 dishes. She'd be like, all right, which one is harder to make at home, or you would less likely to make at home versus the one that you could feasibly make at home if you had the right ingredients that we might have. So, all right, I'll pick the one that I'm probably never going to have the patience to make it at home for myself.
I'm always thinking about the number of dishes I'm going to have to wash afterwards.
That's a factor too, yeah.
Even if it's funny when I think about even just like making drinks. I mean, because I have my shakers, I have my measuring cups, I have my special spoon if I want to stir something and chill it, or if I want to shake it, everything. And then afterwards, I'm like, I made myself my drink, and it's all sitting on a counter now. Which after we're done with the show, I'm gonna have to go to the kitchen and clean everything. I totally get that. So I'm always wondering, like, man, does James Bond find himself doing dishes afterwards? You're like, oh man, I made those. Maybe that's why he just wants a simple vodka martini chilled.
Well,
that's why chill the shit and drink it and then forget about it.
I think that's why he drinks so much straight whiskey in private. Where you just whiskey neat, he just takes the glass and just pours it out, and then he's done. I don't even know if he knows how to clean dishes.
Can I tell you something? If I can relate to
Bond, he has a Scottish maid. He doesn't have to worry about that stuff.
Oh, see, you took away my one thing where I related to James Bond, Dave. It's just I don't even.
He doesn't like to do dishes either way. If he's got a maid, he doesn't like to do dishes.
I got my bottle of whiskey, my empty glass. That's all I got to do is pour. And boom, look at me, folks. I'm like James Bond.
Speaking of empty glass, do you guys need I'm going to reload here. So I'm going to have
my bar is in the bar, if you want to call it that, is in the other room. So I'm just like sucking down the last few drops of this Vesper.
I'm going to do a little quick Negroni here.
Dave, if you need me to vamp for you for a little bit while you go refresh your drink, I can do that.
Okay. All right. I don't want to wake up with a hangover tomorrow, 5:30. I don't know, Tom. The Negroni is apparently what Daniel Craig ordered on his final day of shooting No Time to Die. Celebratory drink. Yeah.
That is a good drink. Yeah. I think that is. I was trying to think about what my top 5 drinks were, or where Negroni would definitely be up there. I don't know if it's my number 1, but it would definitely be in the conversation.
Yeah.
But that's related.
I did really enjoy the Americano. I think I made that one for View to a Kill because he orders that in the View to a Kill short story, which is completely unrelated to the movie. But that was a really tasty drink.
That's very and the Negroni is where you comes directly out of the Americano, because the legend goes that the Americano was very popular in Torino, in northern Italy, and one of the nearby aristocrats, Count Negroni, had a gin still, and said, I really like this Americano, but I want gin instead of soda water. I want more alcohol in it. And that's where the Negroni actually comes from, is that it was a variation on the Americano, I guess, in some of the sense that the Vesper is a variation on the Martini.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It was just a change out. So if you're drinking a Negroni, that's very appropriate actually for Craig to want a Negroni. Well, where was he filming? Was he filming in Italy? The Negroni is very Italian.
Ooh, you know what? I don't know where he. Actually, no. I correct myself. So, I believe the last scenes that he shot were the scenes that are not actually filmed there, but set in Cuba, which was just a soundstage in England. So,
okay.
Yeah. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty, because at the end of this documentary I watched earlier, there's a scene where he kind of thanks the cast and crew, I believe after he filmed like his last scene, his last shot, and I'm 90% sure it's that scene, that sequence that's the soundstage in England that's made to look like Havana or Cuba.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's where he has his run-in with Paloma, which is also a drink.
Yes.
Paloma. Actually, the Paloma is one of my favorite drinks, and very easy to make.
Really? It is very easy to make.
Yeah.
What's in a Paloma again?
Elliot, you know what it's in. What?
It's squirt. Which, good luck finding it. And what's the spirit that's in the Paloma? I forget.
Tequila. You can make a shaken version with grapefruit juice. I think it's like grapefruit juice, simple syrup, and tequila. It's very similar to a daiquiri.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
the
version
what? I've always had those with squirt. There's also a similar one. My sister-in-law's Peruvian, and it's something very similar to the Paloma. I'm trying to remember what it's called, but it has all the ingredients that you just described, Tom. The grape juice. I'm like, grapefruit juice. I'm like, oh my goodness. I remember at my brother's wedding, my sister-in-law, her father has a restaurant, a Peruvian restaurant, where they held both the wedding and the reception. And I got there early somehow. I don't know how. I meet her father for the first time. I'm like the uncle that nobody knows. I walk in. Next thing I know, I'm getting fed all these Peruvian drinks before the wedding. I'm like, wow.
Before the wedding.
Yeah. Which was kind of nice. But yeah.
Nice.
I thought you were joking about squirts, but I Googled it and you were.
It's grapefruit.
Yeah, but it's grapefruit. It's like that's like the hood version, for no other, but you have the fancy version as Tom described, and then the one that the rest of us,
Well, grapefruit's very versatile. There's lots of grapefruit sodas. Like you guys ever had Ting? Ting, Ting, Ting.
No.
Ting is a Jamaican grapefruit.
Oh yes, that's right.
Soda,
Yes. I've never had. No, I take that back. I have had it. Yes,
that's what we were talking about. Bond in Jamaica. Mm-hmm. That's perfect blend, and it's a big thing. Is Jamaican rum and Ting. If you have a nice bottle of Jamaican rum, those two go together perfectly.
I think I'm hitting the liquor store tomorrow.
We usually Jamaican rum is something we always have in our cabinet. We can never not have a Jamaican rum.
What was that? Was it for my birthday, Elliot? You got me the Blackwell.
The Blackwell.
Yeah, that was excellent. I still have a little bit of. I'm trying to preserve it.
Well, it's funny because I have found just the regular Blackwell bottles. In fact, I remember when I went to go see No Time to Die. There's a scene where Bond drinks from the tall Blackwell. I'm like, oh man, I went looking around for that little short black bottle with the 007 logo on it, and the whole time I could have just gotten the regular bottle. I am obsessive about that kind of stuff where it's like screen used items. So there's the Blackwell rum from No Time to Die. There's also the Johnny Walker whiskey from Blade Runner 2049, where I don't know if you're familiar with that, but they came out with a special limited edition bottle of that for the Blade Runner movie. And goodness, you can't find it anywhere now. It's like this special, like square type bottle. It looks different from your regular Johnny Walker Black or bottle. But yeah, now I'm like I wish now I had found some more bottles of the Blackwell, the regular Blackwell rum. Yeah. The other day I had gone liquor shopping with my friend Patty for that very thing, for her YouTube show, for her live stream, and she bought some of the Blackwell rum, which she really likes. But it was a tall Jamaican
one.
So
yeah.
Anyway, guys, I've been drinking a bit, so if I'm not making sense right now,
no, that's great.
I think the fact that you're drinking a bit, you're getting more talkative, which is good.
Yeah.
Really?
So far, so good.
It's funny because for anyone who's wondering why I'm kind of like sitting back and listening, last episode with the Indiana Jones one, I swear to God, I talked so damn much, and poor Dave hardly got a word in the whole time. I'm like, you know what, Dave? You're in charge of the show this week.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, we were speaking to a topic that you're much more knowledgeable on than I was.
Ridiculous. You mean ridiculously obsessive about? But anyway.
Yeah, that works too. Now, if we want to veer this conversation into the history of Chicago White Sox uniforms, then we talk another like 3 hours.
I will say this about the White Sox. Okay, I am a Cubs fan. Okay, I am a Cubs fan, but I will not hide the fact that I think the White Sox have the coolest baseball uniforms in the city. When they went through that, I remember when they went to what we know now as the pinstripes. They have the pinstripes with that cool lettering, the Sox lettering.
The old
before that, it was we called them the Good Humor ice cream uniforms. I hadn't heard that.
They look like curly QC. The curly QC on the
even before that.
The 83s.
The 83s. Which are actually kind of cool now when you look back at them. Like, oh, these are actually. And the Birmingham White Sox have the Birmingham club has a similar logo, which is actually kind of cool.
I like the Dick Allen version better.
Right. Well, that's right. The Dick Allen. I want them to bring back the little socks with the wings on them.
Oh yeah, from the 50s.
Oh yeah,
60s team.
From the 50s, for the Go-Go Sox. That's a great logo.
Oh yeah, the Go-Go White Sox.
Yeah.
And right there. You would see me as a Cubs fan. I'd be wearing Sox paraphernalia all the time because it's just freaking cool.
Yeah.
The Cubs have the most boring vanilla uniforms. I'm sorry. And then the moment they started putting the names on the back of the home jerseys for the home pinstripes.
Oh, they've had that.
The Sox didn't always have their player names on the back either.
Well,
that's what the Yankees.
Well, the funny thing is that the Sox were one of the first teams to actually put names on the back of their jerseys.
Yeah,
period.
I think they were the first.
They were the first in 1960 to actually do that. So they were the one who started that whole thing. But I think the Cubs do more than well enough. The Cubs have a quirk of their road uniform that I think is one of the cooler things in baseball, is that the letters and the numbers on the Cubs road uniform are two different colors, but they're the same on the back of the jersey as on the front of the jersey. So they have the Chicago letters in blue outlined in white with the little red number in the corner. And on the back of the jersey, they have the player name in blue outlined in white, and then the player number in red. And that's just a little feature where it's different from front to back. It has a little bit of a different look, but I think it's pretty cool. I think Cubs do more than well. I think personally, the White Sox are better, but I'm biased.
Hey, to me though, I will say I own a few Cubs jerseys. And I myself I love their batting practice jerseys.
The solid blue with the walking Cub.
Yep, the solid blue. And I remember when they brought the walking Cub bit and they made that. I'm like, oh, that's something they need to jump all over. And there's the old 1908 Cub with the holding the
standing
bat.
Cub with the bat.
Yeah. They need to bring that back.
That is a cool logo.
Yeah.
They've worn that a few years with solid navy blue. A few times they've done that. I think in maybe 15 years ago they wore that. That was a really good look that they did too, from like the 19-teens.
They should just bring back again the softball jerseys, the pullovers. The ones from the 84 team, the 85 team. Bring them back.
For the Cubs?
Yeah.
The 84 pullovers? They did that a few years ago with the when they had Wrigley Field's 100th anniversary.
Yeah.
They brought
I'm just saying
back
permanently.
Permanently.
Yeah. Bring them back. And the White Sox should bring back the shorts.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Tom and I have gone back and forth endlessly about whether the Sox should bring back red into their uniforms, because I've always thought it was cool for the last 30 years that they're the only team that has neutral colors, black and silver, but that little bit of red, just that pop of color is like, you can't deny how good that looks. We've
gone over this. It doesn't work with the current logo.
Yes, you're right.
Because of the verticals with the S, it's because of the way that works out, because the way it was in the difference between that in the 50s and the way it is now, because they're two slightly different logos.
Yeah.
I've tried to make it work any which way. I had concept on UniWatch a couple of months ago, trying to make it work. The closest, you cannot do it with the current logo. You have to tweak the logo somehow in order to get red to actually work with it.
Yeah. They could just throw back to those 59s, and that would be great.
Well, you could throw back to the 59s too, but I think you'd have to wind up changing the black and white hat, which would be like changing a Picasso. That hat is so perfect.
Yeah.
The black and white hat that says SOX on it. It's just, I don't think there's a better hat in baseball. I mean, there's a reason why it's everywhere in pop culture.
Yeah.
Because the gangs love wearing that stuff. I remember when they actually debuted those. They was that whole thing at Comiskey. I call it Comiskey.
Yeah, it was old Comiskey.
They had the folks walking out. They had different representations of the different uniforms that they were looking at introducing, and everyone just loved the SOX. They loved the pinstripes. They loved the black and white. It was a boom. And I'm telling you, the jersey stuff. But unfortunately, because they were also the Raiders colors. So then you have,
Well, there was an Athletic article earlier this year before the season came out about the history that went into the actual design process. Mm-hmm. And they came this close to going with blue and silver. They came close to going with Cowboys colors. But the Raiders did figure in, as did the LA Kings, which were big with Gretzky, which had just switched to black and silver. But I thought the best part was they had to make the pinstripes just a little bit thinner, mm-hmm. because to Jerry Reinsdorf it looked too much like the Yankees. So they had to make pinstripes thinner because Jerry Reinsdorf, being the fantastic lifelong Dodgers fan that he is, didn't want his team associated with the Yankees. So he said, well, let's make the pinstripes a little bit thinner. And then they look great. That's what we're talking about. Dave, we knew that this was probably inevitable, that we were going to come onto this topic eventually.
Yeah. Well, I'm the one on this path.
And they have a slimming effect on everyone except David Wells. David Wells looks like, gravity is being distorted in his particular area.
Actually, there's actually another topic for your podcast is thinking about James Bond suits. We're thinking about pinstripes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, there is that bit about the fashion of Bond. I mean, we can get into it. We will get into it. And thanks for veering us back that way. Because I know that I've been wanting to get the folks of SIS training on the show. They're going to be on the show. They're the ones who sell the Bond related merchandise. They have that really cool MI6 logo training shirts, jerseys, sweatpants. They have an entire replica outfit from Skyfall, where
when he's doing his training, like the track suits are
the tracksuit. They have the actual tracksuit, replica of the tracksuit, which I almost bought for myself over the holidays.
How much is that, by the way?
It wasn't too expensive, not for an Adidas suit or whatever. It wasn't terrible.
Yeah.
The thing that hit me for a moment was, okay, I can buy this thing, but the moment I put it on and I look at myself in the mirror, I'm going to go, I look nothing like Daniel Craig.
Well, that's the advantage of the martini, is that the more martinis you drink, the more you think you look like Daniel Craig.
It's going to take a hell of a lot of martinis to make me think I look like Daniel Craig.
That's an incremental process.
Right. Huge incremental. We're approaching alcohol poisoning to get to that level. No, but really the fashion bit, I'm just curious, Tom, with what you know about, how things have evolved, how people look at the character and the things associated with him. Let's say going forward, can something like James Bond work marketing him, like, let's say, with the Gap catalog?
With the Gap.
As opposed to, that higher level stuff that we really associate with.
Okay. I really like the Gap.
I don't get.
So yeah, you can do it. I mean, if they're able, and anything is marketable with anything, and I think one thing we don't appreciate maybe often enough with James Bond is how often he can, as much as we talk about the high, you can also be very low in terms of what's on the list. We've talked a lot about, you can know the cognacs and great wines, and also just want a Jack Daniels, or just drink a shot of Smirnoff. And you can do both because one thing that's interesting me about the character is how he does this because it's his job. Mm-hmm. It's not a passion project for him. It's like he's doing this because he's paid to do it, because he was trained to do it. It's just job. It's like going to work for any of us. Mm-hmm. So there's a certain element of professionalism to it, where it's just, this is his job, this is what he does, and you can go low. You can go low culture on that just as easily as you can go high. In terms of both of the clothes and in terms of the spirits that you're drinking, because you can order something very high class, and at the same time you can order, like I saw a scene from, it was License to Kill. He's drinking a Bud with a lime in it.
Oh yeah, that's License to Kill. Yeah, that's the Miami Vice Bond movie. Yeah,
the Miami Vice Bond movie. So you can go, not necessarily, and I guess that's one thing about drinking and about, I shouldn't say alcohol, but one thing about bar culture is that it crosses all spectrums. Is that everyone wants to kick back at some point and have a social lubricant. It's tens of thousands of years old in human history of what human beings do. It's part of the human experience. It's part of what makes us relatable to each other. There was some bit where you look at the number of Bond villains who are teetotalers, who are dry, as though there's something not entirely there for somebody who doesn't like the occasional drink. And some
Trump?
people can't. Well, there's some people who can't drink because it's bad, because they have because of biology or psychology. Alcoholism is a very serious problem particularly in our country, not just now, but also way before Prohibition. A massive problem. So I don't mean to say anything bad about people who cannot imbibe alcohol or who won't. It's like because it's a very serious problem. But the culture around it is something that is at least relatable. And if you're making a movie franchise and selling it to billions of people, that this is something that's relatable no matter where you go. That people can kind of grab onto that as something familiar, whether it's a vodka martini at a casino in Montenegro or whether it's a private glass of bourbon on the rocks. That's something that people can reach out or experience and have identify with as a relatable human connection.
I will say that's like my thing that kind of, we've talked about this before, Dave and I have, but when it comes to marketing, and let's say if I want to live the Bond, the lifestyle, we did a bit a while back about that. It's like, man, being a Bond fan is expensive. It's not just, it's always the really nice clothes. It's always the Omega watches. It's the high end top shelf spirits. And I make the joke about the Gap. Can you market Bond through the Gap? I remember when I was watching the early Sean Connery Bond films, I'm looking at him, the way he dressed. I'm like, holy shit, that's like all stuff. He's dressing like you would like in a Gap catalog, like a Gap model. The nice shirts, the shorts, looking very nice. That fashion from the 60s, of course, coming back to today, it always goes in cycles. Then moving forward, like how is it that they can market things that make it more accessible to the common person who can't afford the Omega watches, who can't afford the really nice tailored suits? I'm looking at the beginning of No Time to Die. I know you haven't seen it yet.
No, I've seen it. Have
you seen No Time to Die?
Oh yeah, loved it.
Oh, you did see it. Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. That did not look like a tailored suit that Bond was wearing in the very beginning. I mean, he was wearing
cream suit.
It was a little tight.
A bit, but I mean, it didn't look like, it wasn't that really. I'm not going, Bond was J. Crew. I mean, it
was a little J. Crew. Well,
but yeah. So I'm like, okay. It seemed like at that point they were like, it felt like, oh yeah, he's been like living on his own for a bit. He's been hanging out with, Miss Swan, Madeline.
Yeah.
They've been together for a bit, and it's like he's no longer wearing the nice tailored suits. He's just wearing a nice blazer with, pair of slacks, button up, And I'm like, oh, that seems like a more of an everyman type of look than what we've seen from Bond and other things. And to me, I'm like, where do you do the whole bit where you get Bond to relate to folks on a marketing aspect? Yeah, he's super cool, the super spy. He's the male power fantasy, but can we bring him to a level where the guy on an average budget can afford to look like him or drink like him?
Yeah.
Execution.
All right.
I would say I was thinking about a suit tailoring. I would say more than fabric, more than anything else. Sometimes it comes down to tailoring in terms of how, like, I mean, there's other little things like so when I got married, when I got my tuxedo shirt, I made sure to get one with the buttons hidden by the flap, like Craig had in Casino Royale, where he's got the tuxedo shirt with the buttons that are hidden by the flap. I had to have that for my wedding. Oh God. I shouldn't be complaining. I had a great wedding. So it's tailored, and the same occurs with drinks, with alcohol. It's because you can take ingredients that are cheap, and if you use care and you use attention to detail and you measure and you, this is going to sound corny, but you put love into it, you're going to get a good drink.
It's like when they're trying to figure out the
I knew you were going to say this. Yes.
No.
The secret ingredient to the Flaming Homer. Yes, exactly. Love.
Okay, hold on. Wait. I gotta hear this. What makes a flaming Homer? I've got to know.
Professor Frankiak pours the flaming Mo into the. There was a name on the machine. Dave, do you remember the name on the machine?
I don't remember the name of the machine.
I don't remember the name of the machine, but he pours it into it spits out the paper, because this is like 1993, and they have the computer printer. The secret ingredient is love. Who's been messing with the machine?
That's a fun thing to try to recreate, by the way. The Flaming Mo.
Oh, the Flaming Mo? Yeah, that's a good. A little bit. I mean, some of those cough syrups had plenty of alcohol in them, so that's before it was really regulated the way it was. But I guess technically, if you were to put every last little bit of alcohol that you had in your cabinet into a single drink, you'd get a Long Island iced tea.
Yeah, that's true.
Can I tell you, as a kid, I really got buzzed on NyQuil. I remember Mom would give me that whole shot of NyQuil. I'd be like, oh, okay.
I understand that. I had a. Talking more about drinks in the Bond movies. One little detail I noticed, is the drinks Bond doesn't drink. There's a drink that Bond will not order. Bond in all the movies, and as far as I know, all the books, has never ordered a tiki drink.
I think you're right about that. Yeah,
which is ironic considering how much he spends in the Caribbean.
How much time he spends in the Caribbean. And in fact, he's only ordered in the movies, to my knowledge, he's only ordered any drink with citrus twice. Because he had a rum Collins in Thunderball, and then he had a mojito in Die Another Day.
Yeah.
And that is the sum total of the amount of citrus that he's had in. I guess he's not worried about scurvy, I guess.
Yeah, good point.
I don't think he's even had it. I don't think in the movies he hasn't had any gin and tonics. In the books he has a lot of gin and tonics, but not in the movies.
Yeah, I don't think he orders one in a movie.
Not a single gin and tonic in the movie, which is strange given how kind of ubiquitous that drink is.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of odd. And he does not order an old fashioned in any of the movies. The closest he gets is a Sazerac, which was his old fashioned with an absinthe.
Yeah.
Which is another excellent drink for people at home if they have an ability to make themselves a Sazerac. If they don't get down to New Orleans, that's an excellent drink.
Tom,
yeah.
Tom, what do you think are? Let's say I want. What are must-haves I need to have in my home bar?
That's a great question.
God, that's the $1 million question. Must-haves.
You talked about those quadrants. Those,
yes,
I can make some great drinks just having things in those, and they don't have to be too expensive. So, like, let's say I'm a beginner.
Okay,
I want to start stocking my home bar. What are basics that I can have that'll allow me to give me some versatility to make different things?
The easiest, starting from the bottom, some of the easiest things you can pick up are bitters, because bitters are like maybe $4, $5, $6, $7 a bottle, and they last. You're using a dash or two per drink. So like here's one bottle of bitters, a different bottle of bitters. That's not that expensive.
Yeah.
That's easy to pick up. There's grapefruit bitters. There's I've seen cardamom bitters. It's always good to have a bottle of Peychaud's, and it's always good to have a bottle of Angostura because they show up in so many different cocktails.
Yeah.
But those are easy to find. They're cheap, and you can do a lot of things with that. Make your own simple syrup. So you can buy bottles of simple syrup, but if you have sugar and you have water, you can make simple syrup. And if you make simple syrup at a 2-to-1 ratio, that is 2 cups of sugar for every 1 cup of water, that's shelf stable. You can leave that out. You don't have to refrigerate it. And it will basically last forever. I use it when I make coffee for my wife in the morning. As I just put, she likes sugar in her coffee. I don't. So it's easy. I just put a little bit of simple syrup in the bottom of her cappuccino in the morning when I make it for her.
Do I need to boil it?
Not necessarily, not boil. You're just heating it up on the stove until all the sugar dissolves.
Okay.
So you're just, the chemistry is you're just expanding the distance between the water molecules to fit the sugar in until there's no crystallized sugar left. And then you can pour it into, a clean bottle or something. I usually pour boiling water into, I have an old maple syrup bottle that I use. So I just pour boiling water into it. That kind of sterilizes it. And then I pour the sugar, the simple syrup in there. And if you can use like a brown sugar, like a sugar in the raw, all the better, because you get a little more flavor out of that. That's great to have. I would say that would be a must. As far as liqueurs, a bottle of maraschino liqueur will last a long time. It's a little more expensive. I think Dave, you would know that a bottle of maraschino is like maybe $30 at Benny's or something like that.
Yeah, maybe between 25 and 30 when I remember.
Maybe 25 and 30. But it'll last you a long time, and you can do interesting things with it, like you can do Martinez, which is a great drink. You can make an improved whiskey cocktail, which is another great drink. If this was my hacking of the Wisconsin old fashioned, is I did a brandy old fashioned, but instead of doing it with the cherries and the orange slice that you would get when you go north of the border, I used a 1/4 ounce of orange liqueur, and I used a 1/4 ounce of maraschino liqueur, and it replicated the taste almost identically. And you could do it smooth with a nice big rock in there. Nice. And that gets really easy. Which kind of brings me to the next thing: a good orange liqueur, something that you like. Everyone's taste is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to tell anyone to buy a particular brand because taste is all subjective. Some people like triple sec, some people like Cointreau. If I was going to say anything to anyone, I would say experiment. Find one that you like. If you're ordering from a bar, try different varieties. Ask the bartender what they like. I settled on Pierre Ferrand dry curacao because I felt that made the best margarita. I felt that made the best Mai Tai, and it tasted really good even on its own. So that was just what I settled on, and it shows up in so many different things. Going back to the maraschino liqueur, that also shows up in the Hemingway daiquiri, which is also in my top 5 favorite drinks to drink and to make, period. Ernest Hemingway was not only a great writer, but also he could pretty good behind the bar. Beyond that, in terms of, it depends on what you like to drink. If you like whiskey, stock whiskey. If you like gin, gins are all different. Whiskeys are all different. Scotches are all different. You're going to see a lot of different flavors from liquor, from brand to brand to brand. So what you decide is depending on what you like. I tend to shop local, so I buy a lot of Koval because they're local. But it depends on what you like. A lot of people like different things. Yeah. So just sample it, see what you like, figure it out. But if I were to say like basics, make sure you have your own simple syrup, have as many different varieties of bitters as you could get your hands on. um, and orange liqueur and maraschino liqueur. Beyond that, vermouth is good to have on. I like having dry vermouth on hand. I mean, I like martinis, but vermouth is the secret about vermouth is that vermouth is wine. So if you watch the Bond movies, Bond has the bottle of Martini and Rossi just sitting out. Don't do that. Because it's white wine, the second you open it, you're starting the clock on when it goes bad, like any other bottle of wine. So you want to keep that in the fridge. So if you're buying a bottle of vermouth and you're worried about it going bad in the time that it's in the fridge, I've been using it to make sauces. So I use it to deglaze a pan. Anything that calls for white wine in a recipe, you can use dry vermouth. Sweet vermouth is a little tricky because it's a lot more sweet and it has stronger flavor. But anything else for dry white wine, you can mostly use dry vermouth. I just made pasta sauce with it like on Sunday. So that's like really convenient if you like martinis and you like dry vermouth. So that's very kind of convenient for that. But that again depends on your taste. So if you like Manhattans, if you like Negronis, if you like Cardinale, not a Cardinale, a Vieux Carré. If you had a Vieux Carré from New Orleans, you can stock sweet vermouth. If you like martinis or if you like other things with dry vermouth, stock a bottle in the fridge and use it to cook when you're not using it to drink. And that's pretty easy. But
I'm sorry, what about shakers, stirrers, things like that? Like the kind of the equipment you need to make a proper drink?
The equipment you need. You can always MacGyver solutions. So when I first started doing it, I actually really like the dual tin, where you have the two like cups and you put them together and you shake them like that. So originally I was using a regular tin. I was using a pint glass. So I was using you can do that if you have extra pint glasses and you have a martini tin. You want to do like the kind of double tin shaker, see how it fits together because that sometimes can work. I mean, generally you want a shaker and you want something to stir it. In terms of a shaker is kind of a dedicated thing, and that's going to be, again, comfort, like how big do you want it? How many people are you serving for? Like, I was at a family party, and I think I made margaritas for like 8 people. So I was using a big old-fashioned shaker. I was using a big silver tin. I probably shouldn't have shaken it in silver. But I was using a big tin that I got from my grandma that she brought over from Italy. And that's a dedicated piece of hardware. For stirring drinks, if you have a French press, you can stir drinks. That's how kind of I started. Is that you can use a French press, and you can use a stirring spoon. This is what I've got. This is courtesy of my sister-in-law, who very nicely gifted me a cocktail set. And here's my stirring glass with my Hawthorne shaker on top, a Hawthorne strainer, excuse me. So that's something that you can use. If you don't have that, you can use a French press, and you can use a chopstick to stir. If you have ice and like a wood chopstick, like a reusable chopstick, if you got one in Chinatown or something like that, or if you got one at a Japanese restaurant, you can use a chopstick to stir your drink in a French press, and it will taste just as good. But now that I'm thinking about it, if there's any piece of barware that you want to invest in, that you want to make sure that you get right, a good jigger. So the actual measuring cup, because that's how you make drinks that are repeatable. Because if you're eyeballing it, you may hit it once or twice perfectly, but if you want to have that drink again, and if you had it once and liked it, you definitely want to have it again. This is the one I use. It's from OXO. and it's got the things etched on the inside.
Mm.
So I've got 1/3, 3/4, 1 1/2, 1/4, 1/2. Because sometimes the measurements get a little more precise, and you don't want to be eyeballing it.
Yeah.
You know, you want to know that, okay, I put in my Martinez, I put in 1/4 ounce of maraschino liqueur, and I put 2 dashes of orange bitters, and I put 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, and I did this much gin to go into my Martinez. Or if I'm making, I remember I got very specific on it, trying to make a margarita, because the recipe I hitched on that I found that I liked, I needed 3/4 of an ounce of dry curacao and 1/4 of an ounce of agave syrup. And trying to eyeball that was really hard. So if you can get something where you can get very precise with your measurements, great. You know, good jigger will go a long way.
I got at we call it an estate sale, basically a couple years ago. Someone in my condo, either, I can't believe it passed away, or their relatives were just kind of giving away stuff and trying to clear out as much as possible. I got this, it's bigger than a shot glass, but it looks like a shot glass, maybe twice the size of a standard shot glass, that has the markings on it. That thing has come in handy so much.
There you go.
This drinking segment we've been doing on the show, it's just like, man, I think it goes up to 3 ounces. So it's just what are you going to have that has more than, 3 ounces of a particular type of, ingredient? So it's just come in handy.
What suburb you're in.
Good point.
But yeah, I would say good jigger. If you're going to want one piece of barware, if you have a shaker you like, and a good jigger.
Yeah.
More than anything. I mean, I've MacGyvered strainers.
Yeah.
I mean, I love having a Hawthorne strainer that fits over. I have a Hawthorne strainer that fits over a pint glass. That goes a long way, because you can mix in a pint glass if you're in a pinch.
Yeah.
You have strainers and things like that are all great to have. But I've strained drinks with a chopstick. I've strained drinks with a pie slicer.
Nice.
The little triangle thing that you use to cut a slice of. I've just, because all you're trying to do if you have a stir drink is just try to keep the bigger pieces of ice from falling into your drink. So it's, whatever does the job.
Is that MacGyvering or MacGrubering?
This is more MacGrubering than MacGyvering at this point. There's solutions around the kitchen, as long as you kind of know what your end goal is.
Yeah.
There's fun things to do, like a fine mesh strainer if you're trying to make a really nice whiskey sour for yourself. That's always I had a really nice whiskey sour around the holidays. That was really good.
You're making me crave a whiskey sour right now.
Go make a whiskey sour. Go, Elliot. Go make yourself a whiskey sour. Maybe do it. Maybe not tomorrow. Maybe rest up tomorrow, but maybe over on Friday.
Yeah.
Find a good recipe and get an egg out and
I can't. It's like that's separating the egg, the yolk and the white. Is always a big thing for me.
Use your fingers.
It's funny. It's because Dave was saying in the very beginning we were considering making the segment where we actually make the drinks as we're talking.
Yeah,
and
nobody wants to see that.
Nobody wants to see that.
About
I used to do this thing on my Facebook page. It was called Drunk Cooking with Elliot, where you would see me cooking. I would be live streaming myself cooking something as I'm drinking, and as the evening progresses, as I'm drinking and I'm cooking, it's like, I guess it got more interesting because people would say, Elliot, when are you doing the drunk cooking again? When are you going to bring that back? So I don't know how that drunk mixing. The
first drink The first drink definitely would go good. The second and third, maybe less so.
Yeah, I don't know what the educational aspect of that is.
Somewhere, after around the fourth drink, then it becomes drunk coffee making. It's because you're trying to
Pretty
sober
much.
up. Because Bond prefers coffee over tea, famously.
Yes.
Oh, I did want to bring up because I was thinking one thing I've been thinking about in preparation for this is I talked about how the Bond order is always he's in control of the situation and he's always in. There's the exact opposite of that situation, and I don't know because I also like John le Carré. And one of my favorite books is Smiley's People. And there's a moment in Smiley's talk about what a drink order can do for setting the mood in a particular scene. There's this great scene in Smiley's People where he's in Switzerland and he tries to order a cafe creme. So coffee with cream. And he says he tries to do the Bond thing. It's like, I would like a cafe creme in a glass. And the waitress goes up to him and is like, I'm sorry, but if the mister would like a cafe creme in a glass, he would have to come with a schnapps. It's like, okay, fine. Then he just totally folds on it. It's just the difference between the two characters of Bond would order his, he's got 3 parts gin, 1 part vodka, and half a measure of quinoa, let it shake it over, et cetera, et cetera. And the bartender just does it. And here's George Smiley trying to order a cup of coffee and he can't. And he gets pushed back on it and he just gives up.
That's le Carré pushing back at Ian.
That could be le Carré deliberately pushing back against Ian Fleming of just like, oh, okay, just like you try to order this drink and you just get absolute pushback from the people. What happens what does Bond do if he goes into a bar and so like, but sir, no one shakes martinis. Martinis stir, not shake. Why do you want to shake a martini?
I had that actually happen to me once a while back when I was talking about martini shaken not stirred. I have a friend of mine. She's a bartender. She's a mixologist. She came back at me with that very thing. Elliot, you don't shake martinis. She got so she really dug her heels in with me and said, look, let me explain to you why
you don't do this.
Yeah.
There is that one scene in Elliot, You Only Live Twice, when he meets the contact Henderson in Japan. He gives him the cocktail. Go, that is stirred, not shaken. That's how you like it. He's like, yeah, sure. He just kind of goes with it. He just rolls. One time in the series, he gets the drink served incorrectly, but he's very polite about it. He just kind of goes along with it.
You can see on his face he's dying inside, though, just a little bit.
Well, that was Connery throughout the whole movie. He was dying by filming that movie. Very famously, by the way.
I'm going to be honest. As someone who's had martinis both shaken and stirred, I'm like that character in Sideways, Thomas Hayden Church's character in Sideways, when he's trying all these wines and he doesn't see the difference between them, whereas Paul Giamatti is like correcting him and saying, "What's wrong with you? This is what is it? This word, it's quaffable." That's what he keeps saying. In particular, wine is quaffable.
Yeah.
I myself can't tell the difference between a vodka martini shaken or stirred.
There's really no difference.
Right. So
it's the same amount of water. It's almost the same amount of water. It's the same ingredients going into it.
Right, because I do the stirring bit. I've got the thing, and I try to be careful with it, but it's still the ice still melts.
Yeah,
it's still
the laws of thermodynamics still apply. It's aesthetic. It's really is a shaken drink has bubbles in it, and a stirred drink will not. At least a well stirred drink. I mean, you can stir a drink to the point where it has bubbles in it, but that I don't know what you're doing with the spoon there.
Yeah. But there's that thing about the shaking where, you're shaking it and you can feel the shaker getting colder in your hands and you see that condensation on the outside and you're like, okay, we're there. This is what we want.
That's a fun feeling.
Yeah.
You're shaking it and you're doing that.
No.
What else?
This whole show has really appealed to the latent alcoholic in me. But I'm sorry. I know this is two times we've mentioned alcoholism, and I've made a joke. Whereas Tom, you've been very sensitive to it and to the topic, and for folks who again can't drink. So I apologize if I'm offending anybody about the whole thing, but it's like, hey, drinking brings out our personalities.
Well, that was kind of what we were talking about, the transition from gin to vodka. That happened with my grandfather. So my grandfather, in the 50s, he used to have martini parties at his house over here on the northwest side of Chicago, in the neighborhood that I'm still live in today. And he transitioned from gin to vodka, apparently, because in his words, gin was like drinking liquid anger. Is that the way he felt drinking gin was just different from the way he felt drinking vodka. And then it's the same thing we talked about of the martini getting progressively drier and drier because he wanted less and less and less and less and less vermouth in his drink until he just eventually, I guess, had an honest conversation with himself and started ordering vodka on the rocks. And that's one of my very early memories was asking my parents if I could have a glass of water like Grandpa, and they said, "Oh, Tom, you can have a glass of water, but not like Grandpa." So I didn't know. I just saw a big, rocks glass full of ice with cold-looking water.
It's funny. There are those glasses that Pierce Brosnan has. What movie was that, Dave? That he's drinking the straight vodka. Was that
Tomorrow Never Dies?
Yeah.
Tomorrow Never Dies?
Yeah. When he's in the hotel room.
Right.
Yeah.
And he's drinking the straight vodka. I have those same glasses. Like, wow. I'm going to save those for a really difficult day. Because he was having a difficult day that
He's
day.
having a difficult day drinking. I mean, how many? I think he had 2 or 3 of those in that scene.
Yeah.
Which then he gets a visit from a female friend.
Yeah.
Immediately after, which would explain why she left pretty soon after. So, well, I was watching Macbeth on Apple Plus, and they said, the famous line about alcohol from Macbeth. Did you guys hear that? Okay,
you can't set it up.
Okay,
and follow through.
Okay, so so then famously in Macbeth, there's the line about alcohol increasing the desire but decreasing the capacity.
But James Bond is beyond all that.
Well,
is he though?
Can I tell you something?
None of his relationships last.
I know this is going to come off totally wrong. I have never had alcohol decrease my capacity. I mean, unfortunately, maybe if it did, certain problems that occurred later wouldn't have occurred. Complications, I guess.
I'm not going to get myself into any kind of trouble on that one.
What are you going to do? Anyway.
Well, it's certainly we could it's a question of whether James Bond has ever had issues with the alcohol. It's certainly something that was well known enough, at least as far back as the 17th century when the Bard was writing. So,
yeah.
I don't know. And even your armchair psychologist is going to tell you the dude's got issues. I mean, there are serious issues going on there. It is
with
so
Bond or
over
Shakespeare?
the top. It is so over the top with him. The dude, James Bond, has more red flags than the folks, directing traffic at the airport. Like, and of course that's why the women love him. I mean, it's he has so many red flags.
There's a lot of red flags. There's a lot
Yeah.
of red flags. So not necessarily long-term relationship material.
No.
Yeah.
They all want to fix him. The problem is that they're not going to live long enough.
Yeah, I've seen that. There's almost famously, I think the Bond girl who doesn't make it to the halfway point of the movie.
It always amuses me that he always beds a girl at the end, but we never find out what happens to them later, like in the next movie. I would like for once a movie to like pick up like after the bedding from the end of the previous film, and it's like Bond going, "Oh, ooh, wow, I gotta go to the office. Yeah, I'll call you."
Well, they did do that in Austin Powers. You find out that she's a fembot. She was a fembot the whole time.
Right.
It would be great if it was something like really mature and grown up, of like they go out but they want different things out of a relationship, or they're not communicating right. It's just not clicking, where it's like they both like each other but it's just not good, like very kind of adult.
Yeah.
Normal.
Yeah.
She goes, "Hey, do you want to have brunch with my mom?" And he's like, "Oh, I gotta be in like Paris." I gotta work. I gotta work that weekend. Sorry.
There's 3 nuclear warheads that were stolen by Jeff Bezos. I've got to go disarm them.
The funny thing is, it would be true with him. Yeah.
or some random guy in a volcano layer.
Jeff Bezos.
I don't know about Jeff Bezos. I just it was the first rich guy who came to mind.
Come on, everyone knows Jeff Bezos has a headquarters in a volcano. I mean,
I don't know.
It's accepted. It's the worst kept secret. Oh man. I've just been really enjoying this talk here. I really have.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I think
we are starting to bump up against the clock, though, Elliot.
Yeah, we're starting to run against the clock.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I need you to watch the clock because I can just sit here and ramble, and Tom is indulging me in all this. Yeah. So, yeah.
I guess I'm the bartender who keeps pouring you drinks. Dave's got to be the one to ring last call.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, you know that. You know him too, right? Oddly enough, his name was also Tom.
Oh, some bartender poured it.
Wow, small world.
There's always 2 bartenders. There's one, the bartender, who's willing to pour you to the end of the night, and there's one who's got to say, "All right, got to do last call, or the city's going to shut us down."
Yeah. And they do the thing where they turn the lights on.
Oh yeah, they turn the lights
folks,
on.
Time to go home.
Although in my preference, any bar that I'm going to be in toward last night's probably has the lights on anyway, because I'm more of an old man in that way. I want to be able to see what I'm drinking.
Are you a 2 a.m. or 4 a.m. bar kind of guy?
I am a 10:30 type.
Oh wow!
I'm a little too old to be a 4 a.m. guy. I mean, I like being out late, although I think it probably depends on who I'm with and what kind of music we're listening to. So,
yeah.
The last real night out I had drinking before the pandemic was spent drinking some very nice cocktails and listening to Low End Theory. So that, I think, that was a pretty good end to the normalcy as far as it goes. But I've had good night. I've had some good nights out since then. So I've had good nights at home. So can't really complain.
I unfortunately end up in bars where people do karaoke, and it seems like you will never appreciate John Bon Jovi's vocal range until you hear drunk white people trying to do Bon Jovi karaoke.
Yeah, I being a White Sox fan, I got a lot of that around 2005, so I know exactly what you're talking about. Dave knows what I'm talking about.
That's for sure.
It's just a lot of singing. I've sung my share of songs in the bar too, but that's all good.
Please tell me you didn't try Living on a Prayer.
No,
Okay.
the songs that I in my younger days, the songs I would say I sung a lot of Black Keys. Man, I was on it's a bar on Clark Street it's in Lakeview, but it's south of Wrigleyville. So it's like by Diversity. I think it's Clark's or something, not Clark's.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember singing "Meet Me in the City" off of Chillahoma, off of the Black Keys album, at a very loud volume with a buddy from college. So that's kind of my remembrance off of that. Oh, that was back. That was like years ago.
Just curious, if Bond ever did karaoke, what song would it be?
There's a moment in one of the Dynamite comics. It's the one with Odd Job where they're doing. Odd Job is doing karaoke.
Yes.
I think it's Elvis. I think.
I can see Odd Job doing Elvis because again,
Bond refused to participate though.
Right.
Dave. Okay, this is the first thought that came to mind. There's that episode in Justice League Unlimited where Batman sings "Am I Blue?" and that was the first thing that came into my mind.
Wow.
That's the one where Wonder Woman is turned into a pig by Cersei. And Batman has to sing "Am I Blue" to get her changed back to normal.
Yeah.
That's the song that James Bond would sing. And I'm picturing Roger Moore specifically singing it.
You know, that works on every level, almost every level. Wow. Dude, we got to have you back. No, definitely. All right. Wow. That works. For the 4 people who've been watching us this entire night, I think that's the payoff. That's your reward.
They got a nice, probably 18-year Justice League reference.
Oh wow!
That reference isn't quite old enough to drink, but it's not far off.
Anyway, I don't know. Dave said we're up against the clock. Yeah, we kind of are up against the clock. I'm just before we go though. I'm just curious, like Tom, like where can we see more of you, learn more of you, see what you're up to?
Honest, nowhere really. I'm not really public because I'm normally I'm normally just an ordinary private, regular family guy. So.
But you've done stuff. I mean, you've written for things. You said you and Dave.
Yeah, I would say if you want to look up my stuff on uniwatch.com, I've written a few articles for them, but really I'm just a regular guy. By day I'm a lawyer. So that's my job.
What kind of law do you practice? What do you specialize in?
Trademark litigation. Mostly.
Okay.
So nice.
Very interesting.
Northern District of Illinois. So kind of just like I said, I'm just a regular guy.
That's what it's say.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like we have another guest that's been on before. She works for the U.S. government, and
I do not work for the U.S. government.
But don't tell us what she can't really tell us what she does. And the joke is, if she did, she'd have to kill us. And I'm pretty sure she does some really deep.
Okay, I'm not that. Definitely not that. Okay, definitely not that. Yeah. No, I didn't want to.
Okay, no. Daredevil. I'm a lawyer. I just, do stuff.
Okay.
Nothing really special. But at night, I'm a crimson garbed Avenger.
Okay, that's a little bit different than normal Clark Kent reference I get. No, because I took off my I normally wear glasses, but this is my glasses that I normally wear. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, in the intro video, we have you wearing glasses.
Yes.
But, right.
And I happen to be married to a brunette, so she gets called Lois Lane every now and again too. So that's funny.
Any kids?
Right.
Yeah. Congrats.
Thank you. I believe they're sleeping right now. So
Yeah.
So in addition to cocktails, I have a rich, full life.
You live in the dream, my friend. Live in the dream.
I got lucky. It's like I got lucky. That's
I am happy for you.
As am I.
Pleasure to talk to you guys. It's been great.
Yeah,
This has been fun.
It's been fun. Yeah, there's been a lot of laughs on this particular episode.
Well, for an episode about alcohol, there needs to be some.
Well, we haven't had that much alcohol.
That's true.
It's been mostly fun.
Well,
Yeah.
You guys didn't have a lot of alcohol. I had plenty while you guys were talking. I'm like, man, this guy, wow. This is really interesting stuff. For folks who are watching the video, you're getting the visual joke I'm making here. If you're listening to this, you're not getting it, but what are you gonna do? Listen to watch the live stream, folks. You get more of the jokes.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Tom, we've kept you for so long, and I would keep you longer, but I want to be considerate. So Dave, bring us home, man.
Yeah, so we want to talk about Elliot, where everyone, I think at this point, everyone knows where they can find you on social media.
Of course, yes. You can find us on social media. You can find me on social media at Elliot Serrano on Instagram and Twitter. And I forgot to mention last week's our last episode when we were giving away a copy of Raiders of the Lost Ark on Blu-ray. We actually have a winner.
Oh, nice.
Someone who entered and won. Hold on, I need to pull up their name on my Instagram. Douglas Junius, who is a fan of the show, who has been following us, correctly identified that Indiana Jones was originally going to be called Indiana Smith. Of the folks who entered in the contest, his name was pulled. He will get the free copy of the Blu-ray of Indiana Jones or Raiders of the Lost Ark. Lucas went back and renamed everything Indiana Jones and no. It's called the Raiders of the Lost Ark. So Douglas, be on the lookout for a copy of the Blu-ray in your mailbox. Then, of course, if you know what, I'm going to do another one. See this T-shirt I'm wearing?
Yes.
I have worn it once before on the show. Once before. If you can identify the episode where I wore this shirt once before, you're going to have to go into our archives on our Facebook page because the YouTube page doesn't have all the episodes. Write to us at shakingnotheard@gmail.com. Identify the episode I wore it, the movie we were talking about. I got a prize for you too. So
cool.
The last time I wore this shirt on the show, email us at shakingnotheard@gmail.com. You're going to have to go back a bit in our episode archives, find the shirt, and I've got a prize. Yes, of course, follow us on Instagram.com/shakingnotheard. You can always like and share our videos on YouTube.com, Shaking Not Heard. For those of you who are watching us here on the Facebook and the Twitch channel, thank you so much. We've had folks, our regulars who've been watching us. Thank you for being with us. And next week on the MCU review, myself and Dave and John Clark will be talking about the Incredible Hulk. So that'll be fun. I gotta find it. I've got to find it somewhere. I legit have not watched the Incredible Hulk since I saw it in the theaters. I don't know, over 20 years ago.
It's not that old.
Well, it's almost 20 years old.
2009.
Almost, yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
Wait, 2000? No, is it?
13.
The original Hulk movie with Eric Bana is like 20 years old now.
Okay,
But
yeah. I'm talking about the one with Ed Norton.
2008.
Yeah. Ed Norton's 2009.
Yeah.
So it's been a while. I have not seen it since I saw it in the theater. So this is going to be fun.
Tom, do you want to come back at some point to talk about a Marvel movie with us?
Yeah, I could do that.
Yeah.
Which one?
Which one? God.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've seen all of them.
Like, which is the one that jumps out at you? You go, oh man, this is the one I really like. Everyone, like we asked folks, I keep getting Winter Soldier.
You asked me to just describe God. Like which one stood out to me the most? Like that's like if you see the comedians in cars getting coffee with Patton Oswalt, and you ask him what's his favorite superhero, and he has this like 1,000-yard stare. Boy,
Spider-Man, Superman. How hard is that?
Yeah, it's hard. Oh,
that's what she said.
We don't want to put you on the spot.
Thinking about it, I mean, Thor Ragnarok.
That's a popular one.
That's a popular one. I know. Guardians Volume 1 is real high up there on my list.
Okay.
All right.
In terms of what's going on in that. I think Black Panther is the best honestly, I think the best Marvel movie.
Really? Yeah.
Oh yeah. Easily.
All right. It's funny because this is my confession. I have yet to see Black Panther. I have seen every Marvel movie except for Black Panther because Eternals I just watched.
Okay.
And that was, I'm telling you, if you have a hard time sleeping, turn on the Eternals. That baby's gonna knock you out. That's gonna, you have insomnia, turn on the Eternals. That is like between to me right now, Eternals, Dark World. Dark World used to be Thor: The Dark World used to be my least favorite Marvel movie until Eternals came out. And then I was like, oh, there we go. Look at that. They got an Academy Award winning director to make a movie that I like less than Thor: The Dark World. And I like Thor. Thor's one.
Actually, if you want to hit me on for Thor: The Dark World, I could talk about Thor: The Dark World. If you need somebody to actually talk about Thor: The Dark World, because I have,
my friend.
I have not terrible things to say about Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah.
All right.
There was like one of the. It's funny. I look at Thor: The Dark World. We'll save this for the show, but let's just say Thor: The Dark World was Man of Steel. Right? Thor: The Dark World and Superman Man of Steel came out around the same time, and I'm there going,
That's
wow.
Right. They did.
Thor: The Dark World actually was better than Man of Steel. It dealt with the same themes, but dealt with it better. Which is weird. So we'll talk about it. So Tom, put it on your calendar. No, that's phase 2, so we'll have
this
to
phase 2.
Yeah.
That'll take a while.
Anywho. And Dave.
I am on Instagram at Pinto_noir.
Man. I don't know. This is the most I've ever drunk on one of these shows.
You're like me for Living Daylights.
Yeah. There you go. No one can identify the one episode when you got really drunk. I never got someone to give us the correct day that you had gotten kind of happy.
Yeah, Tom, for
No.
that one, I did I can't remember the name. It was not really the drink. I don't think had a name, but it was basically like a German Boilermaker.
Yes,
So
I remember.
okay.
It was a big stein of like a German lager and then schnapps.
And schnapps.
Yeah.
Good. Two great tastes, maybe not great together.
Yeah.
I was like, man, that is something. Add to that, he hadn't really eaten that night.
Yeah, that was my main mistake.
Well, that you should have had a nice big German meal to go with that.
Yeah. I was a little crunch for time that night.
Yeah.
But he was quite happy by the end of the evening. I mean, I had a couple of people comment, man, Dave was really feeling it at the end there. I'm like, oh, well, yeah. Because I've known Dave for a while. So when he gets drunk, it's noticeable to me. But he wasn't noticeable to anyone else.
Yeah. I don't know how to take that.
I don't know. All right.
Very fun.
Dave?
All right. Well, man, I'm not as good as doing this wind down as you are.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
All right. Well, this has been another episode of Shaken Not Heard. We'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss. I'm not sure just yet. The Bond themes.
I think we're doing the Bond themes. Yeah, it's either going to be the Bond themes or either the Bond themes or the Bond women. It's going to be one of those two.
Okay.
It depends on our guests because we do have guests that want to talk about that, but we got to figure it out. So yeah.
Yeah.
But it's still going to be fun. I mean, I'm telling you, it's this Bond stuff ain't going away. I have this feeling that they're going to drop like a surprise announcement on us about the casting for the next Bond film. It's funny.
No, that would be surprising to me.
I know, but hence it's surprising, right?
Yeah.
So, because Tom, this legit happened today at work. We were talking. One of our coworkers came to us out of nowhere because this has been the talk right now about Idris Elba being cast as the next Bond, or that people want him to be cast as the next Bond. And I'm like, I wouldn't mind it, but I know Idris Elba himself isn't keen on the idea because he's even himself has said he feels he's a bit old for the role. And it's like a bit much, it's like maybe 10 years ago it would have worked.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but I mean, I could see also like the possibility of doing it. I mean, if I were Eon, I would tell Idris like, we're gonna do Timothy Dalton. We're gonna do 2 movies. We're just gonna film them back to back. We're gonna make them as good as possible, and you'll be in and out. And we're gonna have 2 good movies out of it, and you can be James Bond.
I actually like that idea.
And just do it, and just say it's like we'll do 2, and because like everybody wants this seems like a good fit. Bond is usually an older guy anyway. Let's just do it. We'll do it back to back, and then you can go on to any number of projects that you want to go. That would be if I were doing Eon, that would be my pitch.
Yeah,
that is a really good idea. I like that idea.
Yeah.
But unlike the idea that I pitched earlier, I said Harry Styles. I say go for it. You want to make some waves. You want to attract a whole new audience. Harry Styles was in Dunkirk. I swear, I didn't even know it was him. I thought it was just this young, unknown actor that I'd never seen before. He was really good. He's already heating up. He did that appearance at the end of Eternals, as Eros as Star Fox. His stock as an actor is rising. Give him a 3-picture deal, and boom, you go from there.
Cool.
I can see that, but I like your idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a kind of at odds or against what they have historically done, where they've gotten unknown guys and they want to lock them up for a decade plus. But maybe they'll intentionally go in a different direction. You know,
You could do that. You could do that, and I think the thing would be just make the scripts really good.
yeah,
Which is
Oh,
$1 million question. You
right
just have to make a good script.
that's the challenge right there.
That's the challenge. But you could if you had the right script, you could say like we've got, because if you only do 2, you only have to come up with 2 good scripts.
All you
Hard
have
come up
to
with
do,
4.
all you have to do is take this straw and weave it into gold. That's all you have to do.
That's all you have to do.
Because great scripts are just so easy to come by. Just ask Pierce Brosnan.
He had some better movies in there.
Look at all the like the Daniel Craig even had all these great scripts every time he played Bond. I mean, Quantum of Solace. Oh, lock that baby! That baby was locked in.
Here's a question that didn't come. Here's a question that did not come up in the Casino Royale thing. If Casino Royale was Daniel Craig's only movie, would he still be one of the better Bonds?
that's a good question.
That is a good question. Now he'd be another George Lazenby. It's funny because I look back at oh, that's right. I never mentioned this to you, Dave. It hit me one day. I was like, you know what they need to do when they reboot Bond? Start instead of with Casino Royale. Boom, your next one with the new Bond, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Boom, use that. Move forward.
They kind of just did that with No Time to Die, though. But they
kind of, but no, make Blofeld your main baddie, and go from there.
Yeah.
But I mean, again, and you're gonna have all these new people watching Bond anyway.
Yeah.
It's funny because every time like a new Marvel movie comes out, a new Star Wars movie comes out, I have people, because there's so much hype surrounding it. I always have friends come to me. Do I need to watch all the previous ones to enjoy it? I'm like, don't worry about it. If they did a good job, you can see this movie and not have seen anything before.
Yeah,
so they can do the same thing. I mean, for folks who've seen everything, fine, but they're not doing this for us now. The next Bond is going to be for the next generation of Bond fan that they want to pull in. So
yeah. Well, ideally, because they definitely need to do that.
Oh, definitely. Which is why Harry Styles should be your new Bond.
I mean, I'm not completely against the idea. It sounds weird on the surface, but I mean, if Christopher Nolan is casting him in his movies, that gives him a lot of credibility.
Have you seen Dunkirk?
I have.
Oh yeah.
He was good. I was surprised. I was like,
he's a good movie.
Yeah. And he was good. I'm like, holy shit, that's Harry Styles. If I didn't know who Harry Styles was, I would have gone, oh, that's that young new British actor.
Yeah.
If I had no idea what he did, and I swear it's like this shows how old I am. I didn't know who Haley Steinfeld was before she did the Hawkeye thing.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, she's really good. Oh shit, she sings?
Yeah.
She's a singer?
Yeah.
Oh wow, I did not know that.
True Grit. She's Spider-Verse.
Yeah, she was playing Stacy.
Holy shit, that's right. She was True. Oh my god.
And also Bumblebee.
Yeah. I never saw Bumblebee, but I did see True Grit. I can't believe I forgot her from that.
Bumblebee is probably the first 5 minutes of Bumblebee is everything I ever wanted in a Transformers movie.
Bumblebee to me is the best Transformers movie. Because it's at least Michael Bay feeling one.
That's seven-year-old Tom was very happy watching the first 5 minutes of
that was a cool opening.
That's not the one with Marky Mark, is it?
No, that's the one with Haley Steinfeld, and that's
John Cena's in it, right? I haven't seen it in a couple years.
I think so, but I mean, in my opinion, it's the best non-Code of Hero Transformer stuff to be out in a long time. So,
yeah.
So anyway, I did not know Haley Steinfeld was a singer too.
Yeah,
so
very talented.
I just looked it up. George Lazenby was 29 going on 30, or maybe he would just turn 30 working on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Harry Styles is 27 now. So you have to assume they won't get going working on the next one for a couple of years. He would be about the same age as Lazenby. So it's his being as young as he is would not be completely unheard of.
Folks, you're seeing it here, hearing it now. We are predicting Harry Styles will be the next Bond. I swear to God, if that happens,
we're willing it into existence.
It's called. We're manifesting it. We're manifesting it into the universe. Harry Styles, the next Bond. Now, who's going to be the new Moneypenny? Is my thing.
Yeah.
You know, the more and more I think about it, can you imagine Harry Styles as Bond, Idris Elba as M?
Yeah, that would be cool. Very cool.
That would be a really cool dynamic.
I'm more partial to Idris Elba as Bond and Pierce Brosnan as M.
Okay, that would also be cool. Dude, you keep bringing these great ideas. I swear to God, we need the broccolis need to watch this. I mean, come on.
This is the longest outro.
I've done radio. This is not uncommon. This is at this point is when the producer for the next show is calling and saying, "Can we have the board? Can we need the board? Can you release the board? The next show wants to take over. Thank you." All right. I told Dave he's in charge, so he's got to bring the ship into the dock.
All right. So, like I said, we'll be back in 2 weeks for a topic TBD, either the theme songs or the Bond women or the villains. Until then, I've been Dave Pinto, Elliot Serrano, our guest Tom Jetner, and this has been another episode of Shaken Not Heard, the podcast for your ears only. Good night.
Good night.